Happy, beautiful day. It's the Pete Cohen podcast. It's episode 2 in a series of 4 podcasts about positive achievement. Today's podcast is called The Growth Mindset. Get ready for another game-changing podcast. I'll see you after the theme tune.
The big question is, how are some people in the world today creating the results they want with their health, wealth, and happiness? What exactly are these people doing? This podcast will give you the answers and inspire you to live the life that you want today.
Happy, beautiful day. Thank you so much for joining me. Super fired up, super excited to deliver another podcast that inspires you, that really helps you to look at things differently. We know that people don't change when we tell them what to do. For real change to occur, our perspective has to change. We have to be able to look at something and go, hey, I've never thought of it like that. And maybe today it will really give you the opportunity to understand a little bit more about achievement and what you're here to do and why human beings struggle so much to get the things done that we need to get done, and why it's just so easy to conform to a society that says, hey, the best thing you can do in the world today is just be comfortable. Just be comfortable doing what everyone else is doing. Now, if you are that person, and I don't think there's anything wrong with taking time out to put your feet up and watch the world go by, ultimately, though, I don't think that that leads to the greatest fulfillment and the greatest achievement that human beings can ever have. And in the first podcast in this series of 4, I really started to break down for all of you what achievement is, what it means. It means the completion of something. It means the finishing of something, and that's what we're all here to do. We're all here to basically live a life, and one day it all finishes, and what do we want our life to be about? And we see, we talked about Abraham Maslow in the last podcast, one of the most well-known psychologists. You know, for years, for every 100 articles that were written on psychology, one article would be on something to do with positivity, with what human beings are capable of. We tended to look at in the field of psychology and neuroscience is what is wrong with people. And if you want to look at what's wrong with people, then, well, go down that rabbit hole and you might never, ever come back. And the fact is that most of us are struggling. How many people do you know that are struggling? How many people do you think there are in the world that we all know that there's millions of people all around the world right now that are sitting down and going, you know what, I don't feel like doing something. So they won't do it. They don't feel like getting out of bed. They don't feel like doing their paperwork. They don't feel like moving. They don't feel like doing anything. They'd rather take the easy route. And the easy route, which is convenience for many of us, is really stopping us from having some of the greatest feelings, because some of the greatest feelings we can have isn't how many likes we have on Facebook. It's much more about the things that we do that make a difference and maybe make a difference to other people. And maybe you use social media and you put stuff out there that does inspire people. I most definitely do. That's definitely what I'm, all about helping people close that gap between where they are and where they want to be. So last podcast, I said, hey, let's talk about this one-to-one. My goal is when I'm doing these podcasts, I really want you to feel like, hey, Pete Cohen is talking to me. He's basically in my ears asking me questions. And I was asking the question, what would be your biggest achievement or your biggest achievements that maybe when you leave your life? So you might have heard there was a comedian called Spike Milligan. And I don't know whether this is true, but I heard that on his gravestone, it says, see, I told you I was ill. On his gravestone. I don't know whether that's true, but I think he said it as a joke that's what he wanted to have. But what do you want to have on your gravestone? Unless, of course, you want to be cremated and you don't want to be buried. But what mark do you want to leave behind? Do you want it to say death by distraction, died by being distracted, died by, as I mentioned in the video that I posted actually on Facebook a few weeks ago that really, really has gone a bit viral. I say a bit viral, it's like 40,000 people that have watched it. Was in a cemetery and basically saying, what do you want the legacy of your life to be? Some of the greatest achievements that we could have died because we didn't have the courage of our conviction, the courage of our conviction to do what we say we're going to do. So I posed the question, what would it be like if one of your biggest achievements in your life was you did what you said you were going to do? A challenge that you might have heard of. It's called having a lack of confidence. Confidence, what that means is trust, confidere, trusting yourself. Most of us don't trust ourselves because we've repeatedly let ourselves down. We feel that other people, in many cases, have let us down. We have to grow. We have to evolve. That's what I want to talk to you about today, the growth mindset. Some of you maybe have heard of the work by a lady called Carol Dweck, who's probably one of the most well-known people in the field of the growth mindset. And maybe you want to go away, and she's done some TED Talks. She's done some amazing, amazing work, especially with children. The growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. Now, just take a moment to think about what type of mindset do you have? We used to say, is the glass half full? Is it half empty? Well, it's really up to you. People used to say if you saw it as half empty, then you had a fixed mindset. If it's half full, growth mindset. And if we look at the attributes of people that have, and I think we can both have both, but ultimately, the greatest achievement you will probably have as we really get into positive achievement is to develop a growth mindset. And for some of you, that might be a bit more of a challenge than others, maybe because of it's in your nature. Maybe it's something encoded in your DNA. I think it's encoded within all of our DNA, actually, to be quite negative, to be on the lookout, to be on our guard. Because as I mentioned in the last podcast, we've only been around literally for not that long. We've been around living in civilization for 6,000 years, but you know what? Before that, even during that time, we were on our backs. We were not on our backs, literally. Some of us maybe were on our backs, but we wouldn't be there for very long because you'd be frightened about what was coming out from somewhere to your left, to your right, somewhere around you that was going to attack you and get you. So you would naturally be on your guard, naturally being scared, naturally if something's going to get me, so I need to be on my guard. And I think that mindset, that ability exists in all of us. In fact, one of the things, and when we talk about the greatest achievement, and we'll look at this in the last of these 4 podcasts around one of the greatest achievements in your life could be that how well you manage your thoughts, because your thoughts basically produce feelings, produce emotion. And so many of us are experiencing emotion that isn't really helping us particularly much very well. Does that make sense? Like stress. Have you ever heard of stress? Right now, I don't know how many of you maybe are feeling a little bit stressed, but you don't have to. You could actually feel relaxed. And as you notice the gentle rise and fall of your chest, you're starting to feel amazing. Perhaps one of those biggest achievements will be how well you step into the space of being able to choose how you react, the stimulus and the response. The reason I talk to you about this is that, look, if a lion is chasing a zebra, the zebra will get scared and it will run. But once it knows it's safe, it will switch from being stressed to grazing again. So it can grow and evolve, but zebras don't really need to be very creative. We are the only animals, as far as we know, that have the ability to think about something and make it feel real. We have this ability to see things in our mind and decide, I want to do that. I want to achieve it, and then go out and do it. But for how many times have we said we're going to do something and we didn't do it and let ourselves down? The reason I tell you the thing about the zebra is most of us are living in a state of perpetual stress. And if you're doing that, it's very hard to focus on growth. It's very hard to focus on being creative. Maybe now you're starting to have a different idea of maybe it would be a good idea for me to learn how to relax. That's why meditation has been around as a tool for 2,500 years. I mean, look, our phones are tools, right? Tools that we can use, great tools, fantastic, amazing. But sometimes that tool can be overused and it becomes what? A hindrance to us. Whereas meditation and mindfulness and being aware of what's going on inside you and deciding to grow, because if you have a fixed mindset, you believe that skill and knowledge is set in stone. You know, you either got it or you haven't got it. You basically refrain from any challenge. You think, well, I'm not doing that. I'm not rising to that challenge. And you're always competing with others. You're always comparing yourself with others. I mean, this is quite a simplistic way of looking at growth mindset, but as a community of people right now, all of us that listen to this podcast, we don't need to necessarily go deep into the science. You can do if you want to, but it's pretty much common sense. See, if you ever got a growth mindset, you just want to get better. You just want to get better. You love a challenge. I loved working with athletes. I don't know whether you've ever watched Strictly Come Dancing or Dancing on Ice, and you often see the athletes compared to other people who are maybe entertainers. I think in some cases the athletes outperform because you know what? They love a challenge. When they're faced with a challenge, and we've seen this with brain scans, we see that when someone is faced with something difficult, pain receptors come on. When someone is faced with something that's a challenge, it's not that they don't have pain receptors that come on, but there's another part of their brain, excitement that comes on about the thought of, wow, that would be amazing to be able to do that and get the result. What could I learn from going through this experience? When you have a growth mindset, you're competing against yourself in a positive way. Does that make sense? Now, I don't know where you fall into that spectrum of fixed or growth mindset, but you know what? Personally, for me, I can do both. And I know that every day I'm challenged to grow. I'm challenged to grow by distraction. And when we look at the world now and realize, well, how much has the world changed? I don't know how many of you would have chosen the world that you're living in now if you could have gone back in time, but most of us haven't really had a choice. We just kind of go along with what everyone else has done. And now we live in a world where we don't really have to grow and get better. As I mentioned in the last podcast, that I think one of the greatest achievements that we can have is to practice certain virtues, practice wisdom, practice courage, practice love, practice mastery, practice getting better at something. Last night, when I'm recording this, Conor McGregor won in the UFC fight. I didn't watch it, but I just woke up this morning and I wanted to see the result. I don't know what it is about sport that still drags me in. There's something about competing. There's something about seeing people working hard at something. But you can bet that Conor McGregor didn't just turn up and not train. You know, I don't know how many of you have seen the Rocky film, or the Rocky films where you see him running up the steps at Philadelphia. Is it Philadelphia? I think so. And he runs up to the top and he jumps up. And, you know, you think about what he overcame, but we all want that feeling. We all want that feeling. You know, if you could just have that feeling of having done something incredible. But we know it doesn't work like that because it's the hard yards that someone like him has put in. It's called doing the work. And I don't know if you think with the fixed mindset that maybe you think I've got the lazy gene. The amount of people who I've worked, you know, helping lose weight over the years, the amount of people that have told me, you know, I've just got the fat gene. Well, you probably don't have the fat gene. And you only, if you do have more fat cells than other people, which is and does happen, that predisposition is only going to be exposed if you eat more than you need to and you don't move your body. Ultimately, do you want to develop a growth mindset? And if you think about a positive achievement, you know what? I am going to develop more of a positive mindset. I'm going to develop the growth mindset. Okay, well, how could you do that? You've got to grow every day. You've got to find ways to, and this is so fascinating. Some of the studies that will be done. In fact, you can see a video with Carol Dweck, the lady who's, like I said in the beginning, maybe the most well-known person for growth mindset around the world. And she talks about this story of a 9-year-old who basically reads her book and writes to her and says, it's great to read a book like this. This is based on research and I found it really interesting and thank you very much. And I realized at the end that I'd wasted my life. He's 9 years old. Now, I'm sure that's what we want. If we could give children something, we would want to give them a sense of the importance of growing and learning and evolving and practicing wisdom and practicing getting better, fitter, healthier, happier, and passing it on to other people. In fact, some of the studies which also Carol Dweck talks about, there's one particular study where 2 groups of children and they performed tests, and at the end, one group were told, you did really well, you must be really smart, versus another group that you did really well, you must have worked really hard. And then they were, after that, given basically both groups an impossible test. And what was really interesting was the ones that were told, you did really well, you must be smart. They then thought, well, maybe I must not be smart then. And then the ones who were told you must have worked really hard, they thought that they hadn't worked hard enough. And it develops a mindset of, I've got to work, See, as much as we create this world that you are a part of, where we don't really have to do very much, a part of us is dying because part of us is just made up, unfortunately, to learn by doing, learn by failing, learn by... And she also talks about a school in Chicago where there are 84 units that the children have to pass, and you either pass or just not yet. So develop this culture. It's fascinating. There's some amazing videos that you can watch around this whole thing about the children that had heard not yet. So there's no failing. There's a path to get better. And the reason why athletes tend to do better on things like Strictly Come Dancing is because, well, quite simply, because they know, they relish failing. I always think to myself, have you ever walked down the street and slipped, and then the first thing you look around was, or you tripped, and you look around to see who's looking? I know, I must admit, that's called being self-conscious. And I've done that. Ultimately, and the real thing that we wanted to bring home to you in this podcast today was, do you want to get better at achieving? Do you understand it? If that's what you want to do, you've got to get better at developing a growth mindset. So how do you do that? You have got to believe that your skills and your knowledge and your self-belief is not set in stone. And I know we've spoken about this on previous podcasts, that for so many of us, the first 20 years of our life were traumatic. And many of us are still working on stuff that happened to us. But ultimately, we can have post-traumatic stress, or we can have post-traumatic growth. It's fascinating when you see 2 different people gone through a very similar experience and they come through it on the other side. And some people have taken that trauma and decided to grow from it. And some people have kept that stress and that anxiety for the rest of their life. What human beings can be, we must be. In order to evolve, in order to change, you're probably not going to be able to do it all on your own. You need a few things. You might need an environment of like-minded people. You might have to study. This is what my work is all about. And that's why I believe we have the best, or one of the most incredible opportunities for anyone in the world to go to work on themselves, which is my 365 Elite Pro. It's my program that allows people to not just learn about confidence. We have 10 pillars to our process: learning about confidence, applying confidence, learning about willpower and applying willpower, learning about mindfulness and developing a strong mind. All of these key areas. Now, you could work with us or you could go somewhere else to do this work, but there is work that needs to be done. And once the work is done, in many cases, it's done. In terms of, you'll have a set of new habits and conditioned responses where you're all about achieving. So that when you do leave this earth and they're talking about you at your funeral, what is it they will be saying? What they'll be saying about me is, hey, Pete was a fantastic person. Pete always was there for me when I needed him. Pete was a guiding light. Pete made me laugh. Pete made a big impact on me to the point where the impact that I have on other people, they don't even know him, but it doesn't matter. His legacy lives on. That's quite a simple way of saying what people will say about me. If I went today, I'm sure that's what people would say about me. But I want them to say more. And I want them to say more because I want them to be more. What is your biggest takeaway from this podcast today? If you want to go a bit deeper into this, go and check out something that we've recently launched. It's called discover.petecohen.com. Discover.petecohen.com. Go through our goal setting assessment. It's an assessment to help you work out, where are you with your goals? Maybe you don't have any. You might even find it useful just to go through the process to kind of see that. And at the end, it gives you an overview of what areas you need to focus on. It's absolutely free, and it is designed to help people go from where they are to where they want to be. Why? Because as an organization, Pete Cohen, we are all about helping people close that gap between where they are and where they want to be. Do you want to develop that growth mindset where you're focused on getting better, where you're looking for challenges? Give me challenges because it's a means to me learning. Give me the opportunity to compete with myself, for me to show myself what I'm truly capable of doing. I don't know if you're like me and you had some challenges in your past that have affected who you are today. But your past doesn't have to be your future. Your future can be something different. With that 9-year-old going, I've wasted my life, he's now, I'm sure, going to embrace the rest of his life. Please don't be one of those people that is making an excuse about, well, I'm just too old now. You're never too old to take a deep breath, put a big smile on your face and say, I'm going to be the change that I want to be. I want to see. Who said that? Gandhi. Be the change that you want to see in the world. Thank you so much for listening. We love our audience. We ask you if you've taken something positive away from this podcast, please make a comment. Review the podcast if it's on iTunes or wherever you can, because it makes a difference. Tell people about the podcast because people need to hear this stuff. I really, really do believe that. And I thank you for listening. You guys are awesome. We'll see you for episode 3 in this series of 4 podcasts about positive achievement. All the best. Much love.